I want to talk about getting older as a programmer, because I think some of us would like to program our whole lives, but we worry that we won't be able to, that we might have to transition into a different kind of work, or that somehow our bodies are going to let us down, so we won't be able to do something that we love. And how can we have some control about that? That's really what I want to focus on. However, I have to say that just because some advice worked for me doesn't mean that it will work for anyone else, including you. And that when something doesn't work for someone and they go away, you don't know that it didn't work for them. Right? The famous plane with the dots picture, which, by the way, it's not a true story, it's a what-if story. Nobody ever actually drew pictures of where planes were coming back with damage and said this is where they should be armored better. They said, imagine if we only mapped where planes come back with damage. This is exactly where you shouldn't armor planes, because planes that are damaged here come back. Okay? It's the places where there are no dots that the plane went down. And similarly, when we do certain things in our industry and people then leave our industry, we lose the data point that there are people who don't like that thing we did. However, I'm not just going to tell you about my own experience as getting older in this world. I did a survey. Maybe some of you answered it. Hands up if you did. Not so many Europeans. I did get people elsewhere who had done my survey. Hundreds of people answered my survey. And I also got a little nerdy about articles and studies and actual medical doctor papers, and I learned a ton of things. And I talked to people, including people who used to be programmers and are not anymore. It's a really useful data point if you don't want to join that group, is to find out what put somebody in that group. But that doesn't mean this is all going to be good advice. Please use your judgment and take the things that resonate with you. This is a fairly recent picture from earlier this year. I am 63 years old. My mother, very technical person, worked in software quality assurance for a long time and did software training well into her 70s, is now 88. And some of you are like, I am nowhere near those numbers. But you will be, okay? If you're lucky. And when it comes to having a happy old age full of things you like doing, it's never too soon to start working on that. There are things you can do in your 20s that will make a difference in your 70s, and that you can do in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s, and it's also never too late, okay? But there are resources you may want to draw on in your 60s, in your 70s, in your 80s that cannot be built up in a year or two. And I'm not just talking about saving for retirement. There are other kinds of resources as well I'm going to talk about throughout the talk. So you're going to accumulate things over decades. It would be a good idea to think about that now. Some of you know the backstory that I very nearly died in 2016, and now I'm still here. And this is a very real truth. I have quotes about aging throughout this talk. This one is from someone who unfortunately is no longer getting older, because that's the deal. Right? You want to get older because it is a lot better than the alternative. And we don't all make it to being an old programmer. I know that people die because I get phone calls. We have a survey, we have a system, we have a business, and one person understood the C++ code, and they died. And we need your help. It's an interesting marketing strategy to find myself in, but it's one I do find myself in. And I'm pretty sure none of you want to be the person who just died at work, right? You would like to prevent that. But even if you get to live to be into your 70s, your 80s, your 90s, we don't all get to keep programming for as long as we want to. We all know someone who had to retire. They didn't really want to. It's great if you choose to. Your money's all lined up. How you're going to fill your days is all lined up. You have a cake, you have a party, and you relax. Cardigan and slippers by the fire or whatever. But it's a different story when it's like, you can't work here anymore and no one else will hire you. And I know people in that boat, and it's not a fun boat. I know people who change industries. One fellow became a long-distance truck driver, and he's super happy. He's never been happier. But that's not always, again, the case. So how can you live a life now that you get to keep in control later and don't get forced out? I mentioned that I did a survey. I asked about what's a problem that you're concerned about your body. And people talked about their eyes. People talked about feeling stiff and sore and achy. And people talked about not being able to physically do certain things that are required of us in the day. You know, we don't have to carry around heavy boxes of printer paper anymore, but there is a physicality occasionally to this very sedentary job. And then I asked a pile of questions about people's minds. I expected memory to be the big thing here, but the big thing turned out to be mood. People were really worried that as they got older, they would just not care, and that they would just be cynical and whatever, you know? It's like the 10th reorg I've seen. Do what you want. So I'm going to talk about these kind of in the order that they came up on the survey. But before I talk about body issues, yesterday Bryce said, happens before doesn't mean it actually happens before. In a similar way, I want to tell you that not all problems with your body are really problems with your body. Okay? People can be horrible. And in my survey, a bunch of people told me that if they had an optional mobility aid, they saw a real difference between when they used it and when they didn't. That if they had a cane or a brace or a walker, people suddenly acted like they were stupid. That in a restaurant, they would ask their companion what they wanted to order instead of the cane-holding person. But that without the cane, they were capable of choosing their own food. Okay, is that a mobility problem? Right? It's not really a mobility problem. You should be able to use a mobility aid. People who live far north, like we do, I'm in Canada, a little bit south of here, you're north here. The days are short in the winter. The nights are long, and you have to drive in the dark. And if you're in your 20s, you may not be familiar with this yet, but there may come a time when you can't drive at night. Does that mean you can't work anymore? And if it does, is that an eye problem or a workplace problem? Oh, and there's a trend, especially in the US, but I've seen it elsewhere, of a bunch of offices that are just designed by, I'm not going to say like fitness fanatics, but they consider it to be an excellent design. We have all of the offices on the second floor, and all of the food and cafeterias and so forth is down one floor, and all of the meetings is up one floor from the offices, and if you want to grab a coffee before the meeting, you got to go down 2 flights and up 3 flights, and everyone's running up and down stairs, and you got a bum knee. And you don't like this up and down stairs business. Like even to go to the bathroom, you got to go up and down a flight of stairs. You know, is that a body problem or is it a workplace problem? In other words, you might be too old for this work, but you might just be too old for this workplace. And I want you to think about that. It's not always you that's wrong if you're having a body-related issue. Sometimes it's the environment that people are putting that body into. Now, that said, eyes was the #1 concern, which really surprised me. Like 3/4 of the people were concerned and very concerned about their eyes. And I was like, I kind of thought of this as a solved problem, but okay, let's talk about eyes. Get them checked even if they work great right now. Having a baseline and then subsequent points gives you velocity, lets you know if changes are happening fast enough to be a concern or they're no big deal. And no big deal and slow for eyes is a whole different scale to what we're used to. I go pretty regularly, and she's checking me for cataracts, and she's like, oh, I'm seeing some very early signs. Now, with some people, it goes very quickly, and we might have to move in as little as 5 years. Oh, that's very quickly? Okay. She said, but I have no reason to believe it's going to be quick for you. I'm like, okay, well, you just keep monitoring then. Like, just getting things checked and putting down that baseline. It is normal for your vision to change as you age. The word for it is presbyopia, and presby means elderly. So it's just perfectly ordinary. As a child, I was incredibly long-sighted. I was the one who could see all of the signs first when we were going somewhere as a group. And then eventually my vision got normal, and then eventually I got to the point where it needed to be corrected. It's fine. When you first start finding that your arms are not quite long enough for what you need to do to be able to see things, or you're complaining about the dim light in restaurants because you can't read the small print, you can go to the drugstore or the grocery store or any place like that and buy, people call them cheaters, people call them readers. They're a single magnification, like 1.25, 1.5, 2, whatever. And literally, you just put one on and then grab a little bottle off a nearby shelf and see if you can read it. Right? And if not, try a stronger one until you find one you like. Good, you're done. And you spend like, I don't know, $20 for that. I don't know what that would be in euros, but then later you can order them online for like a third of that once you know your number. And that will work for anything close range, reading, work in restaurant menus and other pill bottles and things you can't read well, and works quite well on your screen as well. Eventually, if you're having a problem with seeing at a longer distance, they will not work for that, and you'll want to actually go to an optometrist, get your eyes checked, and get glasses that let you see a long distance. And it is a normal and everyday thing to have multiple glasses. So these are trifocals, which is fantastic for when I'm out and about in the world, but kind of a weird effect on the screen when it's close. So normally when I'm working on the screen, I get my $7 glasses and I put those on instead, and they're great because they're the same magnification all over the whole field of view, and I'm a happy camper. Perfectly okay to have like 4 pairs of glasses. Slightly annoying, my husband will be like, "Where are my glasses?" And I'll be on the dining room table, he's like, "No, not those ones." And they all look the same, but he can tell them apart, and that is a challenge. So if you're going to have like 4, make them different colors. So you're looking for your red ones or your blue ones. That's my tip from the point of view of the spouse. And here is a cool thing that happens for those of you who don't wear glasses now, and especially if you wait a long time to get them, you may discover that your mystery headaches go away. More than one person who was plagued by headaches had the cure be to get glasses when they were working on the computer. So if you're having a headache problem in your life right now, consider that it's actually an eye problem. As well, people can often be a little bit not quite following. I can't read the small bullets on the slide. I can't read the text at the bottom of the screen. I'm sure I'll figure it out from context as the conversation goes on. Once you can actually see everything, you're going to feel a lot better. For me, I've always read all the signs around me all the time. And when I couldn't do that, I felt kind of cut off, even though I don't really need to know that that lane is right turn only or what time this store opens or whatever, but the fact that there was a sign I couldn't read was causing me like a little bit of anxiety. Now that I can read everything again, I'm happy. And probably the best one, you can get more code on the screen. You can bring your font back down. We once had to make a fairly significant change to a Windows application because one of the users refused to get glasses and couldn't read. We couldn't read things at the font size we had. We had to make the font size bigger. In order to do that, we had to split the whole thing up into tabs. It cost a lot of money, and their boss was like, "I just wish I could make her wear glasses," but there you go. But certainly to be able to put my Visual Studio back down to a really small font was a nice thing. I mentioned driving at night. This is a problem for some people as early as their 50s, that the glare of headlights against the contrast of the dark sky is a real problem, and you can't focus or see properly what's going on, okay? They sell all kinds of gimmicks, tinted glasses, polarized, this, that, and the other. They do not work, okay? Sometimes it's a problem caused by cataracts, and so if you get your cataracts fixed, you'll magically get your night driving ability back. If you have glasses on anyway, they should be anti-reflective lenses. And you should also make sure your prescription is right. You can put up with quite a bad prescription in the daytime, but it may be a bigger problem in the night when you've got the glare and the refraction to deal with. And you also really want to be a fusspot about keeping things clean. Your glasses, your headlights, your windshield. If you know old people who are fusspots, it's often because they don't have the resilience to cope with that little bit of extra noise in their information gathering. So keeping everything absolutely pristinely clean helps a lot. And the contrast change of flicking back between looking out the window at the dark and then looking at something bright, like a control panel in your car, and then looking back up at the dark is very challenging. Now, if you think about looking at your GPS and then looking out, that's optional. Maybe your passenger could look at GPS for you, or you could put the GPS on voice. But when I learned to drive, the way you turned the heat up was like this. right? You put your hand to where you knew the heater knob was, and you pushed it or you turned it or something, and that was how you did the radio, and that was how you did everything. And that is not the way they're making cars these days. Right? There's a lot of touch screens, and they're brightly lit touch screens. And sometimes the controls are not always in the right place every time. So you have to look at the lit screen and then back out at the dark. That's going to make life more difficult. So if you're a person who keeps a car for 10 or 15 years, think about this when you're buying cars, because it may become an issue for you. You know the joke about carrots for your eyes? People say, it's actually true. Vitamin A does not help with short-sightedness, with presbyopia, but it does help with this problem. So any red, yellow, orange, and dark green vegetables and fruits, so yes, carrots, but also kale and beets and, tomatoes, whatever, they genuinely do help with your eyesight. And maybe you can adjust your life in some way so that you go home at 2 or 3 in the afternoon in the winter and then work a couple more hours from home, but you drove home while it was still light out. Or maybe you have a way that you go back and forth to work that doesn't involve driving a car, and how eventually you may have a post-driving life. And if you live somewhere and work somewhere that you can't get between any other way than driving, then you may need to think about changing one or the other of those. Now, I do have bad news, and I apologize, and that is that exercise helps. I mean, I wish it didn't. I wish that was just a dumb thing that exercisey people said. But it turns out that whether you're suffering from aches and pains and stiffness and soreness, whether you're having a problem with after 2 flights of stairs, I have to hold onto the railing and breathe for a little while, whether you're having problems getting things out of low drawers or up off of high shelves, your immune system, even your mood, and your ability to learn things. Exercise helps with all of this. Sometimes it's exercise that you can just put into your life, like I walk to work and I walk to the grocery store. Sometimes it's because you have a particularly active hobby, like you like to go canoeing or rock climbing or hiking or something. But for some of these things, you're going to actually have to 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of exercise where the only reason you're doing it is to get this body benefit. I like this quote, you think you don't have time for exercise? Well, you can find time to be sick later. He writes like that because he was writing in the 19th century. And for Canadian content, this is not the Stanley Cup guy. The Stanley Cup guy is his younger brother, though. So I had to quote him. But then here's the other bad news. I had a friend once who claimed to be allergic to chlorophyll and therefore couldn't eat anything green. I'm not going to comment on the validity of that, simply that his wife said they spent a lot of money on cheese, but what are you going to do? He's got to get nutrition somewhere. And it's like, nutrition is not like a blob of jelly that comes in vegetables and cheese and bread interchangeably, right? And unfortunately, exercise isn't either. There are different purposes to different kinds of things of exercises that you might do, and different benefits from different kinds of exercises that you might do. Going for a walk every day will not help you lift heavy things. If you're able to bench press a very heavy weight because you have a strong arm and back, that won't help you get up 10 flights of stairs without pausing, right? Different exercises give you different things. So you might care about strength, about stamina, that's going up the flights of stairs, about being flexible. The number of people who say things like, if I get down on the floor to play with a child, let's say, I won't be able to get back up again. I'll just be stuck there till someone helps me up. That's a very lack of flexibility. And we probably all know someone, hopefully quite old, who can't reach certain parts of their house. Can't get things from the bottom cupboard, can't get things from the top shelf, whatever. These are the things I primarily am caring about, but there are also exercises to get you guns, right? Visible, strong muscles, to lose weight. I got to tell you good news. When you're in your 60s, and especially when you're someone who was dying of cancer, nobody wants you to lose weight. They think gaining weight is the greatest thing. Like, good news, you gained 5 pounds. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about losing weight. There are also people who are training for very specific things, like they want to improve their tennis shot or their golf stroke, or they want to be a faster runner. And I'm not talking about any of that either. And some of the exercises you see other people doing, not just in real life, but like on TV and stuff, they are going for different bullets. They're going for these bottom 3 bullets, and I'm not talking about those. So you sort of choose what you want to do to achieve a goal that you have. I will say this much about weight loss before I go on to the next slide, and that's BMI, body mass index. It's racist nonsense, okay? It's based on looking at one group of people and saying that everybody should look like that, and then when they don't look like that, treating them badly, and then saying, see, they have bad outcomes. Even if you take it on spec, and even if you're in the demographic it was built for, it is healthier to be in the thing they call overweight than to be in the thing they call normal. Okay? There's also a thing they call obese, and you probably shouldn't be in that, but even if you believe it, you should be overweight rather than normal. So, strength. To get stronger, you do a small number, like 5 or 10, of really hard things. Not until you cannot physically, and you try and you fail on the last one, but to close to that. Like, I'll do 10 push-ups, and I don't think I could do 11. Although, you know what? If I tried, maybe I could do an 11th, and I'd fall down on the 12th, like that. Okay? Holding a plank for 60 seconds and thinking you couldn't do an extra 10 or 15 seconds after that. And these take like a minute. Like 5 push-ups, how long does that take? 5 squats. A 60-second plank, guess how long that takes? You can do this multiple times a day. If your camera is off, you can do it while you're waiting for a meeting to start. You can do it in your work clothes, and you don't need to shower before and after. Okay? You don't need to do hundreds of reps. People who are doing hundreds of reps are trying for either stamina or visible muscles or training a very specific muscle. I know a canoeist who's working on like just this muscle. Most of us don't really care if this muscle is strong or not. But you have to learn how to make them easier and harder, because I'm sure a couple of people said, 10 push-ups? I can't even do 1. Well, here's the trick. Neither can I if they're flat on the floor. But if you go on an angle, so that instead of going from flat to a little bit up from flat, you're going from like 45 degrees to a little bit more than 45 degrees, which you do by putting your hand on, say, a staircase. You can do that. It's way easier. And when I was doing these 3 times a day, I had to move down a stair after a while because I was getting stronger and 10 was too easy and I had to make it harder. So learn how with the angles to make them easier and harder. If you're trying to do squats, you can put your hand on a chair. That makes it easier. Make it harder by holding weights. And so keeping it at that level where you can do 10, but you really would not want to do an 11th, and you will just get stronger and stronger. Being strong, especially in your 70s and 80s, means being independent. Means being able to carry something, and especially to be able to carry something with one hand, because you need one hand to hold the stair rail or to hold your mobility aid. And when you need 2 hands to carry anything, now you can't move around. When you can't get the lids off of jars, someone has to come to your house and take the lids off your jars for you, or you stop eating certain things. Your independence needs you to be able to do certain things, and that means to have a certain level of strength in your arms, in your legs, and in your core. Studies have shown that a significant amount of your immune system somehow lives in your muscles. The more muscles you have, the stronger your immune system is. So building strength means you'll get over coughs and colds and whatnots quicker than someone who is not strong. And not all exercise that build muscle qualify for this. For example, I swim every day, and that's not a weight-bearing exercise. But squats and things are a weight-bearing exercise. They also strengthen your bones, which means it's less likely that you're going to break a bone. Trust me, that matters a lot in your 80s. Finally, they've done studies where they assessed just people's hand grip, nothing else, just their ability to squeeze a ball with their hand or pick something up with their hand. With weak hand grips, they were 50% more likely to die. That's a big deal. A couple reasons for it. One, we're back to independence. If you have a very weak hand grip, you can't pick things up, you can't hold that handrail, you can't take the lid off the peanut butter jar. You're having a hard time living independently. Second, almost anything you do to exercise and get stronger legs, stronger arms, stronger core, whatever, your hands are probably going to be involved. If you're doing pull-ups, you require tremendous hand strength in order to do even one pull-up. So the first sign that you're an active person doing lots of stuff is you have strong hands. And then there seem to be some other suggestions that says the capability and competence that comes of having strong enough hands to do everything you want also enables you to do other things you might not otherwise do. Whatever, don't let your hands get weak. Now, stamina is a different deal. Stamina is about how many flights of stairs can you go up before you have to stop and catch your breath? How long can you walk fast for? That kind of thing. Being able to lift your body weight and do one pull-up doesn't mean that you have stamina. To get more stamina, you find something that makes you a little bit out of breath, like kind of level, and you do it for 20 minutes. And if you can do it for 20 minutes every day, you will make most governments happy. 150 minutes a week is a typical recommendation. So 20 minutes a day, every single day, is going to be 140 of those minutes. So yes, you could bike to work. You could go for a run, right? You could play a sport, like tennis or pickleball or squash or whatever the flavor of the week is. It just has to get you out of breath, that's all. Okay? And that will increase your stamina so you can run for buses and you can get up flights of stairs and all the kind of regular things we all have to do in our life. But it's not all that it does. Sustained aerobic exercise, meaning you have to breathe in and out to do it. So like weightlifting, you typically hold your breath while you're lifting that weight. That's not sustained aerobic exercise. Increases adult neurogenesis. That's making new neurons in your brain. Learning. Wow, okay, I need to learn, so that's good. They took people in mid and late life, so 50, 60, 70, 80, and assessed whether or not they were doing any exercise and assessed their cognitive impairment. Mild cognitive impairment is sort of on the way to dementia. And they discovered that if they were exercising, less of them had mild cognitive impairment. Now, what's cause and what's effect? Maybe as you start to get a little cognitive impairment, it's a little more hard to exercise, I get that, but push yourself, it's probably worth it. And physical exercise, both aerobic like this and the resistance weight stuff that I was talking about on the previous slide, improved cognitive function, not just was associated with having better, but when you started doing it, your cognitive function got better in people over 50, regardless of the state in which they started. There are all kinds of like hormones and messenger molecules that fly around your body while you exercise, and especially the stamina type, the aerobic exercise type. You may recognize these words: myokines, dopamine, noradrenaline, serotonin. These are things that make you feel happy. These are things that increase your ability to learn. That makes really sense. Think about a persistence hunter, a group of people who are chasing some, quadruped appropriate to where they live for hours, and either finally succeed in a successful hunt and meat for everyone, or screw up and the quadruped gets away. This would be a good time to learn. Right? You should be totally primed for learning in that moment because there's some very important lesson to learn, and your bodies are still set up that way. So after you work really hard, you're in a good position to learn lessons from whatever you just did. Now, most people neglect the flexibility and balance side of the story, and I think that's because you can't just work it into your day. You can't just ride your bike to work. In order to get more flexible, in order to have better balance, you have to actually do flexibility exercises and balance exercises. So unless your hobby is ballet lessons or figure skating lessons, chances are you're going to have to actually do a thing to be more flexible and to be better at balance. You can start practicing now, developing a habit of, say, doing stretching exercises every morning, because you're really going to need this in your 70s and 80s. The good news is, stretching exercises are nice. Think about a cartoon character waking up in the morning. That's a fun thing, that feels good. You feel better after you did it. You feel better while you're doing it, and you feel better after. And that's all stretching exercises are. You literally pick a limb and stretch it. Try to, in this case, move your hand as far from your shoulder as you can. Stand on one leg and try to put your foot as far from your hip as you can. That's a stretching exercise. It's not painful. Again, you don't need to shower afterwards, and you feel better after you did it. So if you want to develop a morning practice of 5 minutes of stretching by yourself, you'll have better days starting now, but you'll also be carrying a flexible body that's able to balance and stand on one foot when necessary. And being able to balance and catch yourself if you fall, boy, that's important later. If you hurt yourself, they say motion is lotion, and actually using the joint is how you get the joint to heal. So again, do not rest if you're hurt. Don't go out and do weightlifting, but these kind of gentle stretchings, leaning over, bending and straightening up again, makes all the difference in the world. Who's worried specifically about their wrists? Yeah. I notice when people are like, is it okay to say that? Maybe no, maybe I'm the only one. Yeah, lots of people are worried about our wrists. You know, how many of you, when you sleep, curl your hands up under your chin? Don't do that. That one change, I know several people who were considering changing jobs due to wrist pain. And by focusing on sleeping with their wrists flat, their wrist pain is gone. So for example, tuck your hands under your pillow so they're flat on the mattress and you can't curl them up like that. That 8 hours or whatever of being really stretched tight is much harder on your wrist than whatever you're doing with the mouse and the keyboard. Truly. You might say, well, I'll get a brace. Okay, sure. I had a bad time with my wrists a while ago and I got a brace, and you know what it said? Wear this at night so as to keep my wrists flat. And I did. And I almost never have to wear it during daylight hours. It's really about sleeping that way. However, if you want to be careful, you can. Scott Hanselman, who I admire a lot, is talking about getting mad on the internet. We've all done that once in a while. People are wrong on the internet. What are you going to do? And he's like, is that person worth your keystrokes? You know, you only have so many keystrokes in your wrists. Are you going to give a couple thousand of them to that person? Maybe not. That's pretty good advice for more than just your wrists. But listen, if you want to play around with your mouse, get a keyboard, a trackball, some joystick, whatever, like, go for it. You want to get a different keyboard? Why not? Maybe it'll give you some relief right now. Nothing wrong with that. Spending money on your own body is smart. Now, aches and pains. They happen to us all. Getting older can hurt metaphorically, but it can also just hurt literally. You know, sometimes you sleep wrong. How do you sleep wrong? It's not, babies can sleep. It's not a high skill activity, yet somehow you wake up and you hurt because you slept wrong. When you have that kind of literal pain, we live in the future and painkillers exist, okay? And people are like, oh, I don't want to take a painkiller. I don't want to have, it's like a crutch. It's like, you know, when my mom broke her ankle, she used a crutch because then she could still walk until her ankle got better. And if you can't stand up straight because your back hurts, but taking ibuprofen will fix that, take ibuprofen, okay? In fact, here's something to make you feel a little better about times when you might need to take anti-inflammatory meds. There's a list of about a dozen medications that are paradoxically associated with better aging. Now, I say paradoxically because nobody really knows why. So, for example, one of them is a diabetes drug called metformin. And people who are on metformin seem to age better than people who are not, either because they're on a different diabetes drug or for some other reason. There's something about metformin that makes you age better. They don't know why. For reasons that don't make sense. Naproxen is on that list. Naproxen is an anti-inflammatory. And people who take naproxen specifically for their aches and pains seem to age better than people who take different drugs for their aches and pains or ignore their aches and pains. Is that because inflammation is messing up your aging? Is it because people who care enough and are in tune with their bodies and take painkillers? I don't know. I don't have a causation for you. Nobody has a causation for you. But if you're feeling bad about taking an anti-inflammatory, think about the fact that, like, hey, I might be helping my aging process anyway. Long term, if you have aches and pains every day, if you sleep wrong every night, we're back to exercising. Exercising reduces your joint and muscle pain. Okay, it increases your flexibility and it strengthens your muscles. So you need to go back and listen to the Stanley Cup guy's brother and make time for exercising. But also, During the pandemic, a lot of us switched to working at home. And some of us have not gone back. And some of us are working at the dining room table in a dining room chair. Some of us are sitting on our beds with our laptops on our lap. Some of us are in very non-ergonomic office situations. If that's you, invest in your equipment. Sit at a desk of the proper height. Sit in a chair that supports you the way you want to be supported, which is not the same as if you're eating dinner with your family, okay? Sometimes that's what's hurting your back, is your chair or the way you have to hunch down over the slightly too low table that you've been working at since the pandemic started. Hearing. I've talked to a lot of people just this week who have hearing concerns. It's real. Sometimes it's caused by a lifetime of loud noises. Sometimes it's caused by changes in your body as you happen to get older. When you have just mild hearing loss, you may not notice it, but maybe you can't quite follow along in some conversations, and you just step back and let them talk. Maybe you missed a word in a meeting, but you've already asked someone to repeat themselves a couple times, and it's too embarrassing, so you don't want to ask them again, and you hope you'll be able to figure it out from context, right? Maybe you flat out don't go certain places because it's just going to be too noisy and I won't be able to follow along. You should get your hearing checked before you have a problem. As with your eyes, you get a baseline and you get a velocity and you know how long you have to react on things. When I gave this talk the first time, someone in the audience told me that if you do need hearing aids, it takes time to adapt to using them and to learn how to use them. And it's better to do that sooner rather than later. So don't put it off. You can't get your hearing back, but you can wear hearing aids. The key is really to prevent it. And that's loud noises. That's what's going to slowly but surely damage your hearing. So use earplugs when you can. And you know when you're turning the volume up and there's this dialogue that says, hey, if you turn the volume up too loud, you're going to hurt your ears. Like that dialogue is not kidding around, okay? Do not keep your headphones absolutely cranked. And the people next to you on the bus will thank you also if you don't keep your headphones absolutely cranked. What about overall health, like getting over some cold sniffles thing, you know? You probably don't care if you're in your 20s or 30s or even 40s. You probably don't worry about what if I break my wrist. But chances are that's what will kill you. Of the people I have lost who are over 90, and I've lost a lot of people, every single one of them was a lung infection. And falling can be, a bad fall can be the start of the last year of your life. And it's not a nice year. More muscles, you're less likely to take that tumble and break your wrist or your elbow or your shoulder. The reason it's terrible is no matter what you break, you lose your mobility. Right? You can't hold your walker because you have a broken wrist, so you can't walk around, so you stay in bed, so you lose all your muscles. Right? But if you have more muscles, you're less likely to fall, and you have a stronger immune system, and you want to do the right things to prevent it, which mostly means developing habits younger rather than someday saying, well, now I'm old and must wear sensible shoes. Like, just wear the right shoes for where you are. Use the hand railing. You know, walk a little more slowly so that you don't trip. Get your vaccinations. Do you know there's adult vaccinations? You're supposed to get tetanus every 10 years, and you don't just get tetanus when you get tetanus. You get a whole bunch of them. In Canada, we get the same 4 that they give babies. It's called the Tdap. That's tetanus, diphtheria, acellular something or another, and pertussis. And so you should talk to your doctor about getting up to date on these so-called childhood vaccinations, not just for yourself, but also, of course, for the herd immunity of not passing it on to people around you. And wash your hands a lot. Turns out washing hands did nothing for COVID, right? But we wiped out an entire strain of flu. That 1 year where we were all washing our hands all the time, there's a whole strain of flu that's just gone. So I know a lot of people are like, well, that was 2020, who washes their hands? Please, wash your hands a lot. It worked. And Go to your doctor, get regular checkups, and get screenings for things. Half of the people you know are going to go through menopause. And it can start as early as your 40s or 50s, depending on what you define as start. And yes, that means it lasts a long time. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to cope with it because that would make this talk a lot longer. There's a lot going on. I am going to tell you it is not funny. Okay? Like if someone suddenly takes their sweater off, it's not the time for you to make comments about hot flashes. Okay? People who are going through it may choose to make jokes about it, but I'll tell you a very practical reason. Of all the reasons not to tease anybody, when you're having a hot flash, you have a lot of extra blood coming to the surface of your skin. It's incredibly uncomfortable. If someone embarrasses you and adds a blush to that, it is physically painful. Like, is there blood coming out of my face? Because it feels like there's blood coming out of my face. And you can't know that if you haven't been through it. So I'm just going to tell you, do not tease people about menopause. And if you're in charge of anything, dress codes that are super rigid about what you have to wear and how you mustn't take your jacket off or you have to wear pantyhose in the summer or whatever, they make it more difficult. And so do really rigid hours. Okay, there are a lot of sleep issues associated with menopause that don't get talked about, but if someone can have a little more flexible hours during that time, it will also help. Habits I think you should take up. Don't smoke, like not at all. Wear sunscreen. I nearly died of melanoma. Wear sunscreen. And hats. Hats protect your eyes and sunscreen doesn't, and hats don't rinse off and sweat off and so on. If you're going to drink alcohol, I understand a lot of people do. Look, if you want to drink poison, okay. But just a little bit at a time, not a lot, okay? Maybe not every day. Do go for water, but not in that weird like, ding, 1 o'clock, time to drink a liter of water kind of way. Just drink water. It's good. And eat vegetables and eat fruit. I mentioned I'm 63. That means that I was around in the 60s and the 70s while we were discovering all kinds of cool medical things. And I remember this discovery that vitamin C was going to cure and solve everything. And there are all kinds of studies where they compared how much vitamin C people ate. And the more vitamin C they ate, they were healthier. Like heart attacks, strokes, cancers, broken bones, anything and everything. Vitamin C was amazing. And they said, well, maybe those are just people who are choosing to eat vitamin C, who have the money for fresh fruits and vegetables. Not everybody does. So they added fresh fruits and vegetables to the diets of people who weren't eating them. Those people got healthier. It's like, wow, this wonderful thing. Vitamin C was amazing. So eventually they learned how to make vitamin C pills. And then some of the studies, in fact, most of the studies, wouldn't reproduce. Some did, but a bunch more didn't. And it seems now, looking back, that a lot of what vitamin C was getting credit for was really about fiber. The studies where you give people fiber, they reproduce, okay? So don't take multivitamins, eat vegetables and eat fruit, and make them a rainbow so you're getting your eye stuff, your vitamin A. Ultra-processed food is kind of a buzzword, could mean anything, but you know, a steak is less processed than a sausage, which is less processed than an emulsified sausage, right? Not to say that cheese is somehow less healthy than milk, but some very, very processed foods, they've come out of a factory, they've got a lot of extra stuff added into them that you wouldn't put in the homemade version. There's suggestions that would be a good idea not to eat a ton of. Don't work too hard. Saying is, no one on their deathbed ever says they wish they spent more time at the office. It's a very true saying. But also don't try to obsess on anything. Like moderation in all things, including moderation, right? Now, what about other people? I mentioned this briefly in an introduction to the body issues. Age discrimination is very real. On my survey, people said things like, well, they just assume I won't be able to learn the new thing. If you're so good, why aren't you a manager yet? My hiring process was going fantastic as long as it was all emails. Then we jumped on a Zoom, and they ghosted me because they saw my gray hair. The good old, we don't think you'd be a culture fit, which means we think you're too old. And it can be worse for women. Both men and women told me this, that at least men get to be distinguished and experienced once in a while. And most people felt the bigger companies were more of a problem, That in a small company, you're not that person in their 60s, you're Kate. But in a big company, there's folks just judging on quick appearances. However, sometimes the bigger companies give you opportunities to do things without having to go up the traditional ladder, so it can go either way. But what if you're other people? What if you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s and you think that people in their 60s and 70s and 80s kind of are dumb and stupid and should get out of the way, kind of don't learn new things? I'm not going to tell you to be nice to other people and to be fair to other people. I'm going to tell you that thinking that way will hurt your old age. For your own personal benefit, you should think better about being old. People who you survey them and ask them a bunch of stereotypes about old age when they were young, when they got old, they had a better chance of a stroke or a heart attack decades later. If they believed pessimistic concept of old age, they were 50% more likely to end up hospitalized than people who thought positively. Why? I don't know, maybe they stopped exercising as soon as their elbow hurt, right? And then they lost the benefits of exercising. Maybe they were just depressed and miserable that they were heading into that stupid, slow, dumb zone that they thought was inevitable. Whatever the reason, learn about aging, and you are more likely to have a happy old age yourself. Now, I did mention the brain and the mind, and most people were more scared about that than about their bodies, because this is how we earn our bread. And the thought of not being able to do it, it's not inevitable. If you're worried about where did I leave my keys, or what's that person's name, sometimes a lot of this is caused because you can't quite see, so you didn't read their name properly. You didn't quite hear, so you didn't hear their name properly, or you're not sleeping well, maybe because of aches and pains. Fix those if you can. And then habit and routine can carry you a long way. You know, a place for everything and everything in its place. If the keys are always on the hook by the door, then that's where the keys are, right? If you have appointments with yourself, if you have reminders, if you have alarms, let the technology help you with the things you're not supposed to forget. At work, if there's a simple 27-step process for doing something, at the very least write it down, but ideally let's fix that into not being a simple 27-step process. And you may have to give up multitasking. If you're a multitasker, you may find that you're more distractible, you wander off and don't get back to the first one. Just focus on something till it's done. I'll give you an example. I would watch technical talks like this, but I would also like doom scroll in the foreground because you don't really need to see the speaker's face. And then I would notice that I haven't been listening to the speaker for quite a while. Now I watch the videos at 1.5 or double speed, and I have to pay attention and I have to see their face in order to be able to follow along. I can't multitask, but I hear the whole talk. Yay! And I get through it in half the time. Also, yay. So consider that. If you know somebody with ADHD, if you know someone who in any way is neurodiverse, one person can't be diverse, but you know what I mean, they probably have a bunch of tricks for how to do stuff when your brain won't let you. Listen to them. If your brain starts to let you down, the people who've lived with these conditions all their lives will have some fantastic tips for you. What about Sudoku or word find or all those things that your phone likes to advertise to you? Studies have shown that you do get better at the game. You 100% get better at the game. You just don't get better at anything else. Okay? So that's not helpful, but any learning you enjoy makes you get better at other things. So if you would like to learn a new programming language or a new human being language or how to paint or how to play pickleball, whatever pickleball is, but I hear it's a thing, that learning will make you better across the board. And reading for joy, not, again, out of duty. So if you, like me, have told your family they're not allowed to give you books anymore, as you get older, you can let go of that rule and start reading for joy. Because people said, yeah, I'm really worried about having to keep up with all this new stuff. But I've had a lot of conversations with people now, and you know what? We all agree. I could learn it. I could, if I wanted to, right? I mean, I know how to learn. I've been learning forever. Sometimes I can't be bothered. That's a different issue. You can learn the new stuff. You can say, oh, this is just like back in the CVS days when we, like you've got all these I remember the system I was on in the 70s and it had a similar system of permissions. That's great. Some of us, our identity is tied to the old thing. I don't do the web. I want nothing to do with that. That's nonsense. I'm a holdout. Okay, but then what happens when holding out doesn't work anymore? If you can embrace the change and say, I'm doing the same overall work just with different tools, different framework, different language, different whatever, you're still you. Don't tie your identity to your tools. Tie your identity to what you achieve with those tools. People told me they were really worried about being a grumpy old man and a grumpy old woman. We don't have a phrase, grumpy young man. But these are also not inevitable. If you're a warm, generous person now, you're probably going to be a sweet little old lady or a sweet little old man. With one disclaimer, some people are miserable because their life is pretty miserable. They don't have enough money. Their friends have all died. Their families all moved away. They don't have new people. They're sad. You want to try to plan your life so you don't end up sad like that. But if you are a backstabbing, greedy, selfish person now, you're not going to magically get nice when you turn 50 or 60 or 70. I've noticed people's personalities intensify. They don't flip. Sleeping, the best debugger in the world. Go to sleep. It's also when you physically heal from small injuries and things. Some people need more as they get older. Some people need less as they get older. There's no moral aspect to that. The people who need more are not noble and good and pure and someone to admire for that. And the people who need 10 and 11 hours now are not lazy slug-a-beds. Your body is what your body is. Just get as much as you need. They did a study where they arranged for people to sleep really well for a month, and they reported feeling 6 years younger after 1 month of sleeping properly. And 2 nights of bad sleep, they felt 4.5 years older again. This is a saying in my house. It's not always thing one. In this case, thing one would be getting older. Just recently, someone in my family said, well, I'm just slow and sluggish and I don't have any energy and I can't do anything, but what do you want? I'm nearly 90. And it turned out they had a thyroid deficiency. Now they're on thyroid meds and they are themselves again. For me, it was when I had cancer. Not everything that happened to me was because I had cancer. I hurt my knee. And I got knee surgery and my knee stopped hurting. Duh. Okay? Stuff still happens to you even when you're older. You can catch a virus. You can hurt your knee. And these are things that often can be fixed. But people say, well, at my age, it's only to be expected. Probably not, and especially not if it's like overnight. Okay? So think about whether it's something that you can get taken care of, especially if it's like a new allergy or a new shortages. But for all this planning, I have to say, your plans can be taken from you. Things will happen that you were not expecting. And when that happens, to be physically strong, to be able to help somebody move, carry things for them, stay up late, drive somewhere, having the emotional strength to be someone that you can help, having some money, having a line of credit. I knew some people whose house burned down. They were put into a hotel by the emergency services people who was not a nice hotel at all. But they didn't have any money to go stay in a $400 a night hotel. So they stayed in the nasty hotel. Line of credit makes a big difference. Being able to write a persuasive email makes a big difference. These are skills you'll build your whole life, and you never know when you suddenly need to talk to the manager, and literally it's a matter of life or death, and you know how to talk to a manager. There will also be loss. You're going to go to funerals. Companies are going to shut down. Friends are going to move away, or do something that means you can't be friends with them anymore, or tell you that you did that. They're going to die too. They're going to stop making your favorite ice cream or airing your favorite TV show. And there will be some things that you are physically cut off from being able to do. The only cure for loss is gain. Something's lost, but something gained in living every day is a heck of a line for a 23-year-old to write. But Joni Mitchell recently had an aneurysm that left her unable to speak or walk. And over the course of a few years, she's worked her way back to being able to stand, being able to walk, being able to talk, and being able to sing on stage again. And now this line makes a lot more sense. But here's the deal about the loss and the gain. The loss happens to you. The gain you have to do. You got to go out and gain something every day. Make some new friends. If you're not making friends at work, and retirement faces a lot of us, or we've just worked in the same place forever and these are the people, how are you going to make them? Because when you're 85, you're going to want a 60-year-old friend. They can go to the grocery store for you, okay? In fact, it wouldn't hurt to have a 45-year-old friend when you're 85, but if you're 40 now, that friend just got born, so you should probably hold off on meeting them. If you take up new hobbies, it's a great place to meet people who are decades younger than you. If you're retired or working from home and you're home now, look around. Your neighbors might actually be nice people. You probably have no idea. I certainly don't. And family and family's friends and that cousin who you only see every other Christmas might also be really interesting people. Just get out there and do new activities, watch new things, play new things, eat new things, meet new people, and go to new places. They won't all be great, but some of them will. If you're old enough to know who Ingrid Bergman is, I think you'll like this quote better. You get a little out of breath, but the view is so much better. And there are good things about being old. Most of us have more time and more money than we did before. We've been saving up, we've been getting raises, we've been getting promoted, and expenses are falling away. You know, you're not paying for daycare anymore when your kids are in their 30s. Fleetwood Mac in the grocery store. It's a thing of wonder. Sometimes people do think that you are more experienced, more knowledgeable, and so forth just because of how you look. And you can get away with things. You can just say, I don't do that, and people are like, yeah, okay. You're not so scared. You've seen all of this before. And what are they going to do? Fire you? You're trying to decide whether to retire or not. Where's the power? There's no power. I'm here if I want to be here. Otherwise, I'm not. And you can quit. And people don't say, oh, come on, we really need you. They're like, yeah, that's fair. Okay, we get it. So here's what I want you to do. Exercise. I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you a different story, but exercise for your body and for your brain. Save up some money. I mean, live now, do stuff now, but you're going to want those resources in retirement. And the resources of a healthy body too. So eat properly and look after yourself. Go get your eyes, ears, and so on checked out regularly. Make friends and don't stop. Don't be like, oh, that's good. I've got 7 friends now. I'm all set. Make friends and don't stop. Have a purpose because it's not too soon, no matter how young you are. But also, my friends, I promise you, it's not too late to be a happy, healthy, aging programmer. Thank you. If you happen to take pictures, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. If you happen to take pictures of any of the slides, you may have noticed this is not my Twitter handle anymore. I left Twitter like basically the night of the US election. I'm a Canadian, but what can I tell you? I'm on Blue Sky right under the same handle, so you can find me there. Okay. I have 2 minutes according to my notes, so I'll take questions if you have them.
Thanks very much, Kate. Great talk. I recently got some excellent advice from a friend of mine, and you didn't cover that at all, so I think I'll share it with everybody.
Sure.
And he told me, don't let the old in. And I think that's, because like I'm about your own age, and
I'm old now, I can't do that. No, yeah. Shut that down.
No, it's just that, like, you kind of get into this mode that, yeah, I'm the old guy in the office, and you can play that role, But you don't have to play that role.
You do
And I
not.
think that was his main point. Don't let that old in. And of course, he'd probably say, do all those exercises. And if you don't like the if your ice cream's gone like Cherry Garcia, Ben & Jerry's Cherry Garcia, can't get in Ireland,
There you go.
but you can make your own, and it's delicious.
Make your own ice cream,
and
I like
it's
it.
really good, and it's easy.
Thank you. Love the talk, really. Well, first of all, I actually don't have questions, more comments. I don't know what's the hate with the exercising, but it actually feels great to exercise. Try it, trust me. You just did the wrong things. The other thing is, like, for the nearsightedness, myopia, not the version you were talking about, the age. One thing that actually helps is being outside, because if you are looking at the screen, especially phone screen, your eyes are just going to get better at seeing close things and not so good at.
Actually, that's a really good point for those of you who are parents, and I should have mentioned it, so thank you for triggering my neuron. Children who spend half an hour outside every single day have less short-sightedness in their 10s and early teens and so on than children who are inside every day. It's not so much that watching TV will ruin your eyes or being on the screen will ruin your eyes, but being outside and focusing on the distance and coping with a very much higher light level exercises and strengthens some muscles in their eyes that makes it less likely that you'll have a 10-year-old with glasses. So it may also hold on into adulthood. Hey, be outside for half an hour a day. That's going to be good advice in general. In another talk, I shared the secret that you may not all know, which is that every day, every single day, there is a sunrise. Did you know that? And also, later, there's a sunset. They happen quite predictably, and you should probably see one or the other of them. So half an hour outside a day, good for everyone.
That was exactly my point. And one thing I actually do, which helps me with like sight, is just I have a Pomodoro timer. Every 25 minutes, I just look out the window and relax my face, relax my eyes. And it's a meme, but it's a great advice for everyone. Go outside and touch grass.
Touch some grass.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Peter,
By the way, I think we're almost out.
almost out of time. Last
So
question.
about sharing advice. One thing I can share, try it, brush your teeth on one leg. So if you have that electric teeth brushes that have 30-second timers, do it, start maybe one leg with 30
See, I
seconds.
said don't
change
multitask,
it.
and now you're like multitask your balancing exercises with your basic hygiene,
Or
but I do see it.
Just waiting at the traffic light, try to stand on one leg. You might not make it right now.
So this is actually one of my stress tips when I'm super stressed out, especially if I'm like waiting in a line, I stand on one foot. And I don't know why, but I feel better. It doesn't fix anything, but I feel better.
It fixes your back.
Maybe it does, yeah. There's a hand up back there, but maybe we should just gather around and mill because the next speaker's going to want to come in. So thank you all again.